Welcome back to F1 Blogs, everybody. You know, we're your one-stop shop for all things F1. And today we're going to do a really cool deep dive, I think, into Aston Martin's performance, how they're doing this season, and what their strategy might be looking ahead all the way to the 2025 season.
Wow.
We've got some really fascinating insights from a bunch of different F1 blogs and motorsports articles, a lot of them actually in the Vanish.
Yeah.
And they kind of hint that Aston Martin might be playing the long game here.
Interesting.
So that's what we really want to unpack today, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Is Aston Martin sacrificing 2025 for a shot at dominating in 2026?
Well, what's really interesting to me is that they're not exactly being quiet about it.
Yeah.
Like, Aston Martin's approach has definitely raised some eyebrows.
Right.
Because, you don't often see teams so openly prioritizing a future season. Right?
Yeah, it's so true.
Like the arrival of Adrian Newey,
Yeah.
He's a legend.
Yeah.
Legendary designer.
Oh, yeah.
And then you couple that with these huge regulation changes coming in 2026.
Right. It's clear that Aston Martin's focus has really shifted.
It's like they've fast-forwarded through 2025. They're already living in 2026.
Totally.
But a big part of that seems to be them just kind of, accepting that their current car, the AMR 25,
Right.
it's not quite the beast that they were hoping for,
Yeah.
So what's the verdict on its performance so far this season?
If you look at the data, if you look at the race results, the AMR 25, I think it's fair to say, is sitting around the 8th fastest car on the grid.
Okay.
And, to put that into perspective, that's a pretty significant step back from, them being podium contenders like we saw in previous years.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's definitely a step back.
Okay. So not exactly setting the timing sheets on fire this year.
No, not quite.
A lot of the articles that I read pointed to slow corners as being kind of their Achilles heel.
They mentioned Aston Martin just losing huge chunks of time in Australia's Sector 3, which we all know is just like that section is notorious for its really tight turns.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment? Is that what you're seeing too?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
The AMR 25 just really seems to struggle in those slower, more technical sections of the track.
Okay.
You can almost picture it, right? The car just fighting for grip.
Totally.
Just struggling to maintain speed while it's, navigating those tight, twisty turns.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about slow corners, right? Like their qualifying pace has been it's been lacking as well.
Yeah, so they're bleeding time in the corners and they're struggling to really nail those single lap bursts of speed that you need for a good qualifying.
Exactly.
That doesn't really, add up to a recipe for race wins.
No.
So what's the team actually saying about these issues?
Well, Andy Cowell, the team principal, he's actually been pretty upfront about the need for improvement.
Oh,
He's acknowledged that the car definitely has its limitations, and he's emphasized that the team is, they're laser focused
okay.
on really understanding those weaknesses, particularly, in slow corners, and also how they're managing the tires.
Okay.
So, they're analyzing all this data, they're running simulations, they're trying to pinpoint exactly where the AMR 25 is losing performance.
Sounds like they're in detective mode over there.
Yeah.
Just combing through all the data, trying to find out, what the AMR 25's hidden flaws really are.
Exactly. They're trying to find those hidden gremlins.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that, it doesn't sound like they're planning like a radical overhaul of the car, right? It's not like they're going back to the drawing board.
No, and that's the key point here. And this is where their focus on 2026 really comes into play, I think.
Oh.
Aston Martin's taking a very strategic approach to, upgrades this season.
Okay.
They're being very cautious, I think, due to the budget caps, right? Which we all know limit how much teams can spend on developing their cars.
Of course, yeah.
And then also because, as we've been talking about, their main priority really is that 2026 car.
Right. So it's kind of this balancing act for them, right?
Yeah.
They have to improve this car, the AMR 25, enough to be at least somewhat competitive, but they can't just throw all their money at it.
Right.
Especially with these, looming 2026 regulations on the horizon.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance. And the choices that they make this year will definitely have some pretty significant repercussions down the line.
And that brings us to, I think, a really important question. What about the drivers? What about Fernando Alonso? The guy is a two-time world champion. He joined Aston Martin with such high hopes. Yeah. Can he really stomach an entire season where they're essentially playing it safe and accepting kind of a lower position in the standings?
Well, if you look at some of the, the comments Alonso has made, like in these F1 blogs, it seems like, surprisingly, he's pretty on board with the plan. Yeah, he's talked about how much he believes in the team's long-term vision.
Okay.
And he's emphasized that, with Newey leading the way and with a whole year dedicated to developing that new car, Aston Martin can absolutely build a championship-winning car for 2026.
I mean, that's a pretty big leap of faith, isn't it? It's essentially like he's betting on a future that's 2 whole seasons away.
It is. But, you have to remember, he's a veteran. He's a savvy veteran.
Oh, yeah.
He's been in F1 for a long time. He's seen teams rise. He's seen teams fall. And he understands that sometimes you got to play the long game.
Right, right. And, let's not forget about Stroll's 6th-place finish in Australia.
Yeah.
It might give people kind of a misleading impression of the car's true potential.
Absolutely. That result, if you really look at it, was more a product of, like, the chaos in that race, right?
Totally.
And some really brilliant strategy calls.
Yeah.
Not just raw car performance.
Right.
I mean, in a normal race, like, without all the drama and the safety cars, Stroll probably wouldn't have even been, anywhere near the top 6.
Right, so we can't get too carried away with a single result that happened under, some pretty unusual circumstances.
Exactly.
It sounds like Aston Martin's kind of okay with consistent points finishes in 2025, even if it means sacrificing, potential podiums or even a chance at winning a race.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be their approach. It's a gamble, there's no doubt about it.
Right.
But it's a calculated gamble.
Oh.
They're essentially betting on their ability to, like, leapfrog the competition in 2026 when all the rules change.
Right, when the playing field's reset.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we've talked about how Aston Martin's strategy is really all about maximizing their potential in 2026.
Right.
But, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, let's do it.
And his chances at the Chinese Grand Prix coming up.
Exactly. Yeah, he's got a good history in China.
He does.
I'm really curious to see if, even with the AMR 25's, issues, if he can pull off something special there.
Yeah, and, you got to remember, the Shanghai International Circuit,
Yeah.
it's known for, it's got this mix of high-speed straights, but then also these really technical corners.
Right.
It's a track that really demands both raw speed, but also, like, finesse.
Totally. And that's where, you see a driver like Alonso's skill really come into play.
Yeah.
Because he's known for being able to just, like, extract the absolute maximum from a car.
Yeah.
Even when it's not the fastest on the grid, he can, like, wrestle a car around a track like almost nobody else can.
Precisely, yeah. He's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
And this is where, those slow corner weaknesses that we were talking about, they become even more crucial,
Oh, okay.
Because if Aston Martin hasn't made any real progress, in addressing that issue, Alonso might really find himself struggling in those, twisty technical sections.
Yeah, so it's like, even though those long straights, they might play to the AMR 25 strengths, those tight winding sections, those could be their undoing.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost like watching a tug of war, right? Where the car's strengths are battling against its weaknesses.
Yeah, I like that analogy. That's a good one.
And, and we can't forget that the Chinese Grand Prix, it's often unpredictable.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we've seen so many races there with, crazy weather,
Yeah.
safety cars, just all kinds of drama.
Yeah, tons of drama.
And those factors, they could actually play into Alonso's hands,
They could.
Especially if he can stay out of trouble and just capitalize on any chaos that happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's Formula One,
Yeah.
Anything can happen on race day.
Exactly. But even if Alonso doesn't, like, snag a podium or even wing in China,
Right.
his performance there could still give us some really valuable insights into the AMR 25's true potential.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're going to be watching his lap times super closely.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in those slower corners to see if, Aston Martin's made any progress since Australia.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Okay, so China's going to be a really crucial test for both Alonso and the AMR 25.
Yeah, big test.
But zooming out a little bit, we've been talking a lot about 2026.
Yeah.
These, like, huge regulation changes.
Right.
So what are some of the key things that we can expect to see, and how might they play into Aston Martin's hands?
Well, one of the biggest changes, and I think one of the most significant, is the new engine formula.
Okay.
It's going to be heavily focused on electric power
Wow.
with a much larger proportion of the car's power coming from that hybrid system.
So it's kind of a step towards a more sustainable future for F1,
Yeah.
but it also sounds like a pretty huge technical challenge for the teams.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And this could be an area where Aston Martin might actually have an advantage, believe it or not,
Okay, interesting.
because they've been investing a lot, like heavily in their hybrid technology.
Right.
And, they've got some really smart people working on those systems.
So it's almost like they're trying to position themselves as like the green powerhouse of Formula One.
Yeah, there's definitely a marketing angle there.
Right.
But it's also like a genuine technical challenge.
Yeah.
And it could really shake up who's at the top, who's competitive.
For sure, yeah.
Because the teams that really master these new hybrid systems, I mean, they could have a huge edge.
Okay, and what about the aerodynamic regulations? Like what kind of changes are we talking about there?
Well, the 2026 regulations, they're aiming to kind of simplify the cars aerodynamically.
Right.
They want to reduce the downforce,
Okay.
which in theory should make the cars easier to follow and easier to overtake.
So less of those crazy wings and all those aero elements that make the cars look like spaceships.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. The idea is to, create closer racing,
Right.
more wheel-to-wheel action.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, the engineers are always going to find ways to, push the limits of the rule.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But the intention is really to make, the racing more, I guess, visually exciting
Right.
and less reliant on these super complicated aerodynamics.
It sounds like Formula One is trying to recapture that like old school spirit of racing,
Yeah,
where the driver's skill plays a bigger role.
right.
But how does this all tie back into Aston Martin's strategy?
Well, with a clean slate
Mm.
in terms of both the engine and the aero regulations,
Right.
it really levels the playing field to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Teams that were dominant before, they might find themselves struggling to adapt to these new rules.
Okay.
While teams like Aston Martin, who are coming in with, kind of a fresh perspective,
Right.
they might have a chance to really leapfrog the competition.
It's kind of like starting a new season in a fantasy football league.
Yeah.
Everybody's draft picks are reset,
Right.
and the underdogs actually have a shot at rising to the top.
That's a great analogy.
But let's not forget, even with new regulations,
Yeah.
experience, it still matters a lot, right?
It does.
Teams like Red Bull, Mercedes,
Yep.
they have so much knowledge
So much.
and a proven track record of adapting to these rule changes.
Exactly.
So they're not just gonna roll over and let Aston Martin take the championship, right?
Yeah. No, definitely not. I mean, they're going to be putting all their resources into, developing their 2026 cars.
Right.
And, let's be real, they have some of the best engineers in the world
Well,
on their side.
so it's going to be a fascinating battle to watch for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Aston Martin trying to disrupt that established order,
Right.
and then teams like Red Bull and Mercedes, they're fighting to maintain their dominance.
Totally. Yeah. And the outcome of this whole battle,
Yeah.
it might actually depend on something we talked about a little earlier,
Okay.
that delayed wind tunnel.
Right. The elephant in the room. Right.
Yeah.
Without a fully operational wind tunnel, can Aston Martin really develop a car that can compete with the top teams in 2026?
That's the big question. You
Yeah.
know, it's a major concern. I mean, they're already behind schedule.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking.
Right.
Every day that goes by without that wind tunnel
Yeah.
is a day lost in that development race.
It's like they're trying to build a house without any blueprints.
It is. It is.
They've got the vision, they've got the materials, but they're missing this crucial tool.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the longer it takes for that wind tunnel to get up and running,
Yeah.
the more their, ambitious plan starts to look like a pretty risky gamble.
Right. Yeah. It's a good reminder that, even in Formula One, even with the most carefully made plans,
Yeah.
Stuff happens.
Right.
Unforeseen circumstances, they can derail everything.
Yeah.
But it also makes the story that much more interesting, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, will Aston Martin be able to overcome this setback
Right.
and achieve their goals in 2026?
Yeah. Or will their gamble backfire?
I mean, those are the questions that are going to keep us glued to our seats
For sure, yeah.
as we follow, Aston Martin's journey over the next couple of seasons. So we've talked about, Aston Martin's performance this season, their big gamble on the 2026 regulations, and of course that mysterious case of the missing wind tunnel.
Right.
But there's another layer to this whole thing,
Yep.
that we need to kind of peel back and look at.
Okay.
And that's, the financial side of this whole strategy.
Ah, yes, yes. Money makes the F1 world go round.
Exactly. And with those budget caps in place, every dollar really does count.
It really is. Yeah, the teams can't just throw money at a problem anymore.
Right.
They got to be really smart
Right.
about how they spend.
Yeah.
And I think Aston Martin's decision to, put so much emphasis on 2026, it definitely has some interesting financial implications.
Totally. So by choosing to focus on developing that 2026 car, they're basically accepting that, 2025, it's
Yeah.
probably not going to be their best year.
Yeah, and that means fewer points finishes,
Right.
less prize money, potentially even a drop in sponsorship revenue.
Ooh.
So yeah, it's a short-term financial hit
Right.
for a potential long-term gain.
They're really walking a tightrope here.
They
Just
are.
hoping that this whole gamble will pay off in the end.
Yeah, it's a high-stakes game for sure. But think about it this way. If their bet pays off
Yeah.
and they actually do become like a championship contender in 2026,
Yeah.
the rewards could be massive.
I mean, a championship winning team, attracts more sponsors, more fans,
Yeah,
ultimately just way more money.
exactly. It's that classic saying, right? You got to spend money to make money.
Yeah, exactly.
And in Aston Martin's case, they're betting that their big investment in 2026 will give them a much bigger return down the road.
It's really interesting to see how this one strategic decision is affecting not just, their performance on the track,
Yeah,
but also their whole financial situation.
it is.
Well, let's not forget about the people involved.
Right.
What about driver morale? I mean, we know Fernando Alonso, he's a fierce competitor.
Oh, yeah.
How's he feeling about this whole long game strategy?
Well, from what I've seen, reading his comments and interviews,
Mhm.
it seems like he's totally bought into Aston Martin's vision.
Okay.
I mean, he's a veteran.
Yeah.
He gets how this sport works.
Right.
And he knows that sometimes you got to, take a step back
Yeah.
to make a huge leap forward.
Right. And let's not forget, he's not exactly driving for free.
Oh, yeah, right, of course.
I'm sure his salary is helping him feel a little bit better about a maybe not so competitive season.
Right.
But I think it's more than that, right?
Yeah, I think so, too.
Like Alonso at this point in his career, I think he's looking for a challenge that's, legacy defining.
Yeah, he wants to be part of something special,
Right.
something historic.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe he sees Aston Martin as that opportunity,
That's possible.
a chance to build a team from the ground up,
Yeah.
be the leader who takes them to the top.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty powerful motivator.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
But it's not just about Alonso, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the morale of the whole team, from the engineers to the mechanics, I mean, everybody.
Totally.
It's so important.
Right.
If they all believe in the vision, if they're all willing to, put in the work,
Yeah.
even during a tough 2025 season, that shared commitment, that can make all the difference.
Yeah, that's so true. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Aston Martin's 2025 strategy,
Yeah.
we're left with this sense of kind of anticipation and intrigue.
For sure.
Will their gamble pay off?
Right. Will they be able to overcome that wind tunnel delay?
Will they develop a championship caliber car?
Yeah.
Will Alonso get, what he was hoping for?
It's going to be interesting to see.
Only time will tell, right? But one thing is for sure, Aston Martin's bold approach.
Yeah.
I mean, it's injected some real excitement into F1.
It has.
It's a story with twists and turns and a lot of unknowns.
Definitely.
And we're definitely going to be watching closely to see how it all unfolds.
Absolutely.
And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, you know what to do. Make sure to subscribe to F1 Blogs for more insights and analysis and, hot takes
All the hot take.
from the world of F1. And we'll catch you in the next one.